Today we're talking chiffon. And no, I'm not talking about the music, not talking about that. I'm definitely not talking about this. We're actually talking about pie. And if you've never had a chiffon pie of any kind, you don't know what you're missing. Some people might think it's a little old-fashioned. Some people have never heard of it. I don't think it's old-fashioned. I've heard of it. Lots of people have. I think it's fantastic. And since we're talking about pumpkin chiffon pie, it's perfect for Thanksgiving after you've had all that food. So let's get this party started and make some pie. Oh, come on. I gotta get a new editor. I have made this pie for exactly 243 years. No, it feels that way sometimes. I have made this pie, I don't know, as far back as I remember, back toward the age, and I've been doing it since then. So this pie actually was a recipe that was given to me. I can't take credit for it. It's a fascinating story. So we had a neighbor next door when I was growing up, and he was an asshole.
Whoa!
His sisters were very sweet, and they came from, I think it was Salt Lake City. They made this pie and they brought it over just to say hello, and I absolutely flipped. And I said, and I don't remember how old I was about yay high. And I said, I gotta have this recipe, can I have the recipe? And they gave me the recipe and they went back to Salt Lake City and I never saw them again. So I'm really excited to show you this pie today because it's everybody's, I can say, absolute favorite. They actually look forward to it. It's so light, believe it or not, you can have 2, 3, 4, or more slices and put some whipped cream on there and you're good to go. So is the case with any good pie, this pie starts with a very good crust. We've made crust before, so I'm not gonna go through it step by step, but there's other videos there you can see that. But I am gonna use some flour, some butter, and some shortening, because for the butter and the shortening, I want the flavor from the butter and I want that light flakiness from the shortening. And some sugar, some salt, and some water. So give me a minute and I'll get through it. Ta-da! Now we gotta put it in the fridge and let it rest for at least a half an hour so it firms up and gets cold again, and then we're ready to use it. Okay, we got the dough out of the refrigerator and it's nice and cold and it's firmer, but it's still pliable, which is exactly what we want. So we're gonna go ahead and roll this out. We're gonna be making a 9-inch deep dish pie, not a normal pie. And I tend to like to make a little bit more dough so that I have a little bit more overhang. Gives you a little bit more leeway when you're lining it. So you wanna put enough flour on your work surface that it doesn't stick, but you don't want to put so much that you end up incorporating a lot more flour into the dough. Okay, we're going to go ahead and roll this out. And this is just, you know, the normal pâte sucrée or short crust or sweet crust, whatever you want to call it. I'm putting a little bit more, and then I'm going to turn it over. Okay, and now I'm rolling this out for this pie, typically I like to make them as thin as possible, but for this pie, I do about, 3/8 of an inch, because I like a nice bit of crunchy, flaky crust with all that creamy filling. It's just a really nice textural contrast. 9-inch deep dish pie pan. I'm going to lift and tuck, lift and tuck, lift and tuck, lift and tuck. And if it breaks a little bit here, which sometimes it tends to, don't worry about that, because nobody's going to see it. This is going to look really weird, okay? Ta-da! Scissors. No, I'm not giving myself a haircut. It's really easy to trim the excess away when you're using scissors. Now that you have this looking like this, you take some water and just a little bit, you don't want to overdo it, what you're trying to do is make this just a little tacky. And what's happening is the water is really your glue. And the reason we're doing this is we're going to go ahead and fold it over onto itself. And it's sort of a, well, it's a 4-finger or 2-finger and 2-thumb motion where you tuck and fold, tuck and fold, tuck and fold, tuck and fold, and it will look rough at first, okay? This is what it looks like, and you're like, not so nice. But now you go around and you fine tune. And this whole process here, I'm not quite sure how to describe it other than I'm really taking my cues not so much from a technique, but from the feel. So I'm letting what I'm feeling dictate to me what my fingers are doing. Some places it's too thick, some places it's too thin, some places it's a little too high, some places the dough needs to be pushed onto itself so that it sticks a little bit more. Some places, you know, it's thinner, some places it's this, that, and the other. But I'm basically just feeling, I don't even have to look at it really. And you can do the same thing, okay? You don't even have to look at it, just let your touch tell you what your fingers should be doing. And what I'm trying to achieve is if you look around here, okay, you no longer really, for the most part, see the tuck and fold, right? It looked very rough before. Now it's looking like it's all one piece. I basically, not quite pinch, but I use my thumb and my index finger, right? And I have the edge of the pie shell here, and then I basically make like a little mold out of my 2 fingers here and my finger here. And I keep the same thickness while pushing it down for the same height. If you can see the difference between this and this. And get this guy. And just give it a little gentle push so that it's all level. That is a single crust pie shell that we are now going to blind bake because we're not putting a top crust on that. But we want to dock it before we put the weights on there. So this helps prevent steam buildup underneath. And I like to do it around the sides as well. Now, at that point, if you really wanted to, you could actually stick this in the refrigerator and bake it the next day. Or if you wanted, you could actually even stick it in the freezer. You could put it maybe in an aluminum tin and stick them in the freezer and get them all done ahead of time if you want to make a bunch of pies, and you don't have to worry about it. When you want them, just take them out and stick them in the oven right away. You don't even have to thaw it. And to blind bake, I'm going to take a square of parchment, wrinkle it all up, because it's easier to work with, believe it or not. Stick that in the middle, right? Line it. And then you can use pie weights or you can use beans. I like to use both. I'll use some beans on this one. And fill it up as much as you can without overfilling it. And once these beans are baked this way, you're never going to use them for anything else anyway. They're basically prehistoric pebbles now. And there you go. This will now go into a preheated 350-degree oven on the middle rack, and it'll bake until the edges just start to turn a little golden, light golden brown. And at that point, we'll take this off and we'll put it back in the oven and bake it until we see that the bottom of the pie shell is nice and golden brown too. And then you're done. Okay, pie shells are in the oven. We are now at phase 2 of the pumpkin chiffon pie, which is ta-da, the filling. I have 6 eggs. We're gonna separate those. I have brown sugar, and I'm using dark brown sugar. I've got some water, unflavored. unflavored gelatin to go with the unflavored water. I have all the flavor over here. We've got some ginger, we've got some nutmeg, we've got some cinnamon, and some diamond kosher salt, vanilla, of course, the pumpkin, some sugar to whip the meringue with, and we'll get to that in a minute. And I have 1 cup of evaporated milk. Sorry, I've just been wanting to do that. 1 cup evaporated milk. We're going to start with the eggs, and I'm going to separate the yolk from the white. And, you know, there's 2, 3, 4 different methods of separating the egg white from the egg yolk. I'm doing the rocking back and forth method, but you can use whatever method you want. How this ends up becoming a chiffon filling is because we make a base, like lots of desserts, pastries and things. You start with a base, right? Then you end up lightening it with whipped cream or meringue or whipped cream and meringue, but this is only going to be using a meringue. And we're going to make just a typical common meringue or a French meringue where you add the sugar to the raw egg white. So unlike a Swiss meringue or an Italian meringue that involves heat, we're not going to be doing that. We're going to add the sugar. While I start going in this direction, I'm going to actually take this gelatin and I'm going to sprinkle it over cold water. So whenever you use gelatin, all right, you have to actually dissolve it in cold water first. It ends up, you know, expanding and gelatinizing and absorbs all that water, but it has to be cold. If you put this into warm or hot water, it seizes and you end up getting like a giant rubber ball. You just can't do anything with it. So you sprinkle it over the top of the water, back and forth, in an even layer as much as you can. And the one thing you don't want to do, and everybody's like, well, why don't you just pour the water over the gelatin? Because what happens is it ends up creating like a little skin on the outside of the dry, now wet gelatin, and that encapsulates all the rest of the dry in there, and you got the same problem going on. So that's why you end up sprinkling it on the top. So you just leave that alone for now, just forget about it. And we're going to take the spices and the salt, and I'm going to put in, I don't know, maybe 2 teaspoons of vanilla, and basically 1 cap, a normal cap, equals approximately a teaspoon. Now we're going to whisk all this together, and it'll look like, well, heck, that looks like wet sand. That's never going to come together, but it will, because the brown sugar will start to dissolve. And what you want to do is whisk this together until you can get it as smooth as possible first. See how it's starting to, there, see that? Do you see how that just happened? It's pretty cool, isn't it? It's like all sandy, it's gritty, it's lumpy, and then all of a sudden, boom, okay? And you have something like that. And I'm using a glass bowl. That way you guys can see inside, but you can use, you know, normal metal bowl, because we are going to be putting this over a double boiler now. So what I have here is a pot, and it's got about yay much water in there. And as you can see, I've got it simmering. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to put this bowl on top of there and make what basically is a makeshift double boiler. I'm going to put that on top and use a pot holder or a towel or something. And what you want to do is keep whisking this until it's light and frothy and no more grains. It's got to be nice and smooth. Now you can see here, see, when I talk about getting in touch with your food and not following recipe, something like this, it's very important because it's changing texture and it's changing color and it's changing consistency all at the same time. Okay, as you can see, this is, I don't know, sort of doubled. We're going to add the gelatin, but what I want to show you is this. Is that cool? Look, it's like rubber, right? You can actually like pick it up. Now, at that point, we're going to go ahead and just throw that in there. Okay, want to just make sure all that gelatin is dissolved in there, because if it's not completely dissolved, then it won't set up right. And then when you go to slice it, you're gonna get a little pumpkin lava pie. We're gonna go back to the counter and we're gonna finish up this filling. Okay, the gelatin is completely dissolved. And what you want to do next is add the pumpkin. Now, this is one of the few times I am going to mention a brand. I like Libby's. I know you can get all kinds of organic pumpkin puree and all this kind of stuff. And I've tried a lot of them, not all of them. I keep coming back to Libby's. What can I say? So Libby's goes in there, or actually, if you wanted to spend 2 more hours on this recipe, you can go ahead and roast off your own butternut squash or sugar pumpkins, and you can go through all that to get to this point. But I think it's fantastic, and I've made them both ways. Tastes the same. Okay, put that in there. Okay, it's just easier to incorporate the pumpkin into the egg yolk base. So you put that in there first. See, it's starting to look like pumpkin now. Then you add the evaporated milk. Now, if you want, you can use half and half. Evaporated milk, basically, they've removed the water part of it. And it looks like sort of half and half. That is your pumpkin base. We're gonna bring in Mr. Mixer. And remember, I got the egg whites in here, and I've got just granulated sugar. You don't have to use superfine, don't use powdered sugar, just regular granulated sugar. And we're gonna make a basic, common, or French meringue. And so we're gonna whip this to soft peaks, and then we're gonna add the sugar a little bit at a time, and then beat until stiff. I kind of put it high to break up the egg whites first, and then I bring it down a little bit to build volume. And then once I see it's at that stage where it's sort of doubled almost, then I crank it back up again. I'm gonna start to add the sugar little at a time. Don't add the whole thing at once. And then you'll see just how satiny and thick this ends up becoming. It looks almost like whipped cream. Now, this is a very important part. You don't want to under whip this, okay? You don't want soft peaks. You definitely want stiff peaks. So I'm gonna turn it off. You dip it inside, pull it straight up, and then you do this. Okay, that's soft still. It's almost there, right? Because it folds onto itself. If it's stiff peaks, it sticks straight up. It doesn't go anywhere. So we've got a little bit more to go. Okay. Ta-da! Stiff peaks. So here's another way that you can test to see if it has reached stiff peaks. We're good. You want to put about 1/3 in there to lighten the base. And yes, I'm not folding. I'm just whisking it in there so that the rest of the meringue is easier to fold into this. Take this, get all that goodness in there, don't waste it. And as I've said other times, I like to fold with a whisk as opposed to a spatula because I think it works better. So now that's what your chiffon filling looks like. You're like, well, that's a hell of a lot of filling for one pie. Truth be told, I'm making 2 because this pie is so damn popular, it's gonna go fast. So, 1, 2. And I'm gonna divide this between the 2. And that's what you do, you just pour it in, okay? And then I'm gonna tap, 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 tap. This also makes a fabulous dessert in and of itself with no crust. And you can put this into like a martini glass or a really pretty dessert dish, you know, individual ones. And and then let them chill in the refrigerator, and then garnish them with whipped cream and serve them like that, no crust. You can serve some little cookies on the side if you want. I'm gonna stick those in the refrigerator, and they have to set. Depends on the coldness of your refrigerator, really. But it could be anywhere between 1 to 2 hours. Actually, I normally do this the day before and leave it in there overnight and forget about it. And then I either serve it like that, or I go ahead and garnish it. So we'll come back and I will garnish one and leave the other one plain, and then you can see the difference. Ta-da! 2, I repeat, 2 deep dish pumpkin chiffon pies. What's better than 2? 3. Anyway, this is the extra one that I had made. I'm gonna put that one over here for now because we're going to decorate one. So I've got some whipped cream here, some chantilly cream, which is heavy cream whipped with vanilla and sugar, granulated sugar. We've done that plenty of times. Why I use granulated sugar? Why does David use granulated sugar? I don't know. Click around there and see what happens. Where does he say it? Where does he say it? I like it better. It dissolves better. It's cleaner. But we've covered that before. So that's all I have in here is chantilly cream. And if you have a pedestal, you can put the pie on the pedestal and spin it and all that kind of stuff. But we're not going to be doing a lot of stuff like frosting a cake or anything. So I'm just going to put some very simple rosettes, I think, on the edges. This is just a half-inch star tip I'm using. You can cover the entire surface of the pie with cream, and you can pile it on there too. You can do pretty much almost any design you want. The one thing that's becoming very popular nowadays is using a Saint Honoré tip, which is, you get a very cool looking design, but a little too fancy. We're gonna keep it a little more homey. Anyway, you can leave it just like that, or you can sprinkle a little cinnamon on there, just very lightly, see, on the whipped cream. Don't put it on the whole pie, just on the whipped cream, just to give it a little accent. And don't treat it like cocoa, like if you're doing something on like a chocolate tart or a cake. A lot of the times you'll see cakes and tarts and whatnot, they'll take cocoa and they'll just cover the entire top with cocoa, and it looks cool in that application, but you don't want to do that with cinnamon. And there you have it, right? So we have one with cream, and we have one without cream. Best part. We have to try it. Look at that. That look just had a little slight jiggle to it. Okay. If you put too much gelatin in there, you're going to get something that's not very texture-wise. Anyway, it's not very nice. Damn, that's a good pie. So please, you must make this pie. It's not no ifs, ands, or buts. You must make this pie and share it, maybe, and share the video too. If you can subscribe, that would be wonderful, and like the video so that you can like my pie, because my pie likes you too. And ring that little bell over there in the left-hand corner, right-hand corner, right-hand corner. And definitely when you make this, I want to hear from you. I definitely want to hear from you, because this is a winner chicken dinner. As far as I'm concerned, keep the turkey and everything else, go straight for the pie. Damn, that's good.